The chamber was larger than any structure ever built by human hands. It stretched across 5 kilometers of living crystal, its walls pulsing with soft light from captured stars held in containment fields. Tiered seating rose upward in spirals that seemed to touch infinity, filled with beings from every corner of the known universe. Ambassador Rosa Mendez stood at the center of this impossible space. Her heart pounded against her ribs, but her face showed nothing. 20 years of diplomatic service had taught her to hide fear behind a mask of calm. Beside her, Colonel James Hartley kept his shoulders squared and his eyes forward. Dr. Amara Diallo completed their small group, her dark hands steady on the data tablet she carried. 3 humans. 3 small figures on a platform, barely 10 meters wide. Around them, 12 billion eyes watched from the assembled seats. Above them, floating screens broadcast their images to 10,000 civilizations across the galaxy. This was the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council. Humanity had waited 60 years for this invitation. 60 years of careful diplomacy, of proving themselves worthy of contact with the greater galactic community. And now they stood here, expecting to receive membership among the stars. They did not expect what came next. High Chancellor Morvax of the Illithian Dominion rose from the central judicial platform. Its body was a shifting mass of silver tendrils, each one containing a separate consciousness that worked in perfect harmony. When it spoke, the translation devices carried its words to every ear in cold, precise syllables. Species designation: human. Origin: Sol system, 3rd planet. Status: pending review. Rosa inclined her head in acknowledgement. So far, everything matched the protocols they had studied. This assembly was convened, Morvax continued, to consider humanity's application for council membership. However, new information has come to our attention. Information so disturbing that 43 member species have demanded immediate investigation. Rosa felt the first flutter of unease. She glanced at Colonel Hartley, who gave an almost invisible shake of his head. He did not know what this was about either. Humanity. Morvax's form darkened from silver to deep purple, a sign of extreme displeasure among its kind. You stand accused of crimes against developmental rights, crimes against cognitive liberty, crimes against the fundamental freedoms of sentient young. A wave of reaction swept through the assembly. Gasps, clicks, whistles, psychic emanations of shock that pressed against Rosa's mind like physical weight. "We do not understand," Rosa said, keeping her voice steady. "What crimes? We have harmed no one." Silence. Morvax's tendrils writhed with agitation. "You will speak when permitted. The evidence will be presented first." A massive holographic display materialized above the chamber. Images began to play. Rosa recognized them immediately, and confusion replaced her fear. Schools, human schools. Children sitting at desks. Teachers standing at boards. Students raising hands. Bells ringing. Homework being assigned. These recordings, Morvax announced, were obtained by our observation teams over the past 30 years. They document a systematic practice that exists across all human territories. A practice so widespread that it appears to be central to your civilization. The images continued. Children taking tests. Report cards being distributed. Parent-teacher conferences. Graduation ceremonies. You have built institutions. Morvax's voice rose with each word, where children as young as 4 solar cycles are removed from their family units, where they are placed under the control of unrelated adults, where they are confined to rigid schedules, forbidden from leaving, and subjected to constant evaluation and judgment. The assembly erupted. Species that had never agreed on anything united in their outrage. The Velani, a race of empaths who raised their young through shared emotional bonding, wept openly. The Kreth, whose larvae developed in complete freedom until their first molt, drummed their carapaces in fury. "You have created prisons for children," Morvax declared. "You call them schools." Rosa opened her mouth to respond, but another voice cut through the chamber first. "I request permission to present additional evidence." The speaker was Ambassador Thel of the Mindweavers, a species known throughout the galaxy for their telepathic abilities. Her silver form floated above her seat, radiating disgust. "My people have studied human neural patterns. What their schools do to developing minds is nothing short of torture." "Permission granted," Morvax said. Thel projected new images. Brain scans, stress hormone levels, anxiety patterns in human children. Their young experience elevated cortisol during examinations. They show signs of sleep deprivation due to homework assignments. They develop conditions humans call test anxiety and school phobia. They are punished for natural behaviors such as movement and vocalization. She turned to face the human delegation directly. "I have witnessed many primitive species in my centuries of service. None have been so cruel to their own offspring. Even the devourer swarms, who consume 90% of their larvae, allow the survivors complete freedom during their growth phase." Colonel Hartley's jaw tightened. Dr. Diallo's fingers flew across her tablet, desperately searching for relevant data. But Rosa kept her eyes on the assembly, watching, calculating. More witnesses came forward. A representative of the Crystalline Collective described how their young grew in perfect harmony with their environment, never forced, never rushed. A delegate from the Free Minds Coalition testified that his species considered any structured education to be a violation of cognitive autonomy. "We have seen human children crying," one witness said. "Crying because they failed a test. Crying because they received poor marks. Crying because their natural need to play was denied. What kind of species makes its children weep as a matter of policy?" The evidence continued for hours. Detention slips, suspension records, stories of children punished for talking, for daydreaming, for being different. Each piece of evidence drew more outrage from the assembly. Finally, Morvax raised a tendril for silence. "The prosecution rests. Humanity, you have heard the charges against you. If these accusations are proven true, the consequences will be severe. Your species will be quarantined. Your home system will be isolated. You will be forbidden from contact with any council species until you have reformed your barbaric practices." Rosa felt the weight of those words. Isolation. After 60 years of working toward the stars, humanity would be locked away, alone in the darkness. "However," Morvax continued, "council law grants the accused the right to respond. Ambassador Mendez, you may speak." The chamber fell silent. 12 billion beings waited to hear how humanity would defend the indefensible. Rosa Mendez took a slow breath. She thought of her own childhood, the teachers who had shaped her mind, the lessons that had given her the skills to stand here today, the struggles that had made her strong. She thought of her daughter, currently attending 4th grade in a small school in Buenos Aires, learning to read, learning to think, learning to become something more than she was born to be. And Rosa Mendez smiled. It was not a smile of nervousness or defeat. It was the smile of someone who held a card that no one else knew existed. "High Chancellor," she said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber, "honored representatives of the Galactic Council. You have shown us images of our children in classrooms. You have documented their struggles, their tears, their challenges. You believe you have witnessed cruelty." She paused, letting the silence build. "You have witnessed something far more powerful. You have witnessed the process by which humans transform themselves. You have witnessed the forge in which ordinary children become extraordinary beings. You have witnessed our greatest secret, the source of everything humanity has achieved." The assembly stirred with confusion. This was not the response they expected. "You call our schools prisons," Rosa continued. "We call them something else. We call them the birthplace of potential. And with your permission, I would like to show you what that means." Morvax's tendrils rippled with uncertainty. "You wish to present a defense?" "I wish to present a demonstration. One that will require materials from Earth. I request a recess of 12 standard hours." The assembly buzzed with debate. Many argued that no demonstration could justify the systematic suffering of children. Others pointed out that council law clearly permitted such requests. Finally, Morvax rendered its decision. 12 hours. No more. When you return, Ambassador Mendez, you will explain how any civilization can justify what you do to your young. And if your explanation fails to satisfy this assembly, the High Chancellor's form shifted to black, the color of final judgment. Then humanity will learn what it means to face the consequences of the Council's displeasure. Rosa nodded once, her smile never wavering. 12 hours, she agreed. That will be more than enough. As the recess began and the assembly dissolved into clusters of heated discussion, Colonel Hartley leaned close to Rosa. "Do you actually have a plan?" He whispered. Rosa watched the alien representatives, saw the fear and disgust in their various forms of expression, and felt something unexpected rise in her chest. Hope. "James," she said quietly, "they have just given us the greatest opportunity in human history. They want to understand what makes us different. And we are going to show them. Show them what, exactly?" Rosa turned to face him, and her eyes held a fire that made even the veteran soldier take a step back. "We are going to show them why they should be very, very glad that we are asking to be their allies. Because the alternative—" She let the sentence hang unfinished. Dr. Diallo looked up from her tablet, understanding dawning on her face. "You want to show them what we can become," she said. "What our schools actually produce." "Not just what we become," Rosa corrected. "What we can do. What we have done. And what we will continue to do, whether the Council accepts us or not." She turned back to face the vast chamber, where beings from 1,000 worlds still watched the small human delegation with suspicion and fear. "They think they are judging us," Rosa said. "They do not realize that by the time this is over, they will be begging us to teach them our methods." "And if they do not?" Colonel Hartley asked. Rosa Mendez, Ambassador of Earth, smiled her small, dangerous smile. "Then they will learn a different lesson entirely." The chamber lights dimmed as the recess officially began. In 12 hours, humanity would return to face judgment. In 12 hours, the galaxy would learn the truth about human schools, and nothing would ever be the same. The transport ship cut through hyperspace like a blade through silk. Inside its cramped passenger compartment, 3 very different beings sat in uncomfortable silence. Lieutenant Paulo Ferreira had drawn the short straw. As junior liaison officer, he had been assigned to escort the Council's verification team to Earth. His passengers were not making the job easy. High Chancellor Morvax occupied 3 seats, its silver tendrils spreading across every available surface. Ambassador Thel of the Mindweavers hovered in a corner, her telepathic presence pressing against Paulo's thoughts like cold fingers. And in the center of the compartment sat the most unsettling being Paulo had ever encountered. The witness. It had no official name. Its species had died out 2 million years ago, leaving only this single entity behind. It existed as a living lie detector, capable of sensing truth and falsehood across any form of communication. The Council used it only for the most important cases. The fact that it was here told Paulo exactly how seriously the galaxy was taking humanity's trial. "Your mind is troubled," Thel said, her voice sliding directly into Paulo's consciousness. "You fear for your species." "I fear nothing," Paulo replied, keeping his mental walls as strong as he could manage. I am simply curious why you insisted on this visit. Ambassador Mendez requested that we see your educational facilities firsthand. Morvax's tendrils rippled with disgust. She believes witnessing the crimes directly will somehow change our perspective. She is a fool, Thel added. Nothing we see will justify the suffering we have documented. The witness said nothing. It had not spoken in 300 years, according to the briefing files. It simply observed with eyes that seemed to look through reality itself. The ship emerged from hyperspace above Earth. Blue oceans. Green continents. White clouds swirling in patterns that had existed long before any human drew breath. Home, Paulo thought. Whatever happened in the next few hours would determine whether humanity ever left this world again. They landed in Geneva, at the Interstellar Relations headquarters. But Ambassador Mendez was not waiting to take them to a government facility or a diplomatic meeting room. She was waiting to take them to Riverside Elementary School. This is insane. Thel protested as their transport descended toward a small building surrounded by grass and trees. You are taking us directly to the scene of the crimes. Do you wish to make our case for us? Rosa smiled. I wish to show you truth. Is that not why you brought the witness? They landed as a bell rang inside the building. Paulo watched the observers carefully as children began pouring out of doors, streaming onto the painted asphalt of the playground. Morvax recoiled. They are releasing the prisoners? This is called recess, Paulo explained. A scheduled break between instructional periods. They are allowed outside? Thel's telepathic voice carried genuine confusion. Unsupervised? Supervised, actually. Teachers monitor the area. Paulo pointed to several adults positioned around the playground. But the children choose their own activities. What followed was unlike anything the observers had expected. Children ran. Children jumped. Children hung upside down from metal structures and pumped their legs on swings and threw balls at each other with cheerful violence. They screamed with joy. They laughed until they could barely breathe. They formed instant friendships and broke them and formed new ones within the span of minutes. This is chaos. Morvax said, This is play, Paulo corrected. But they were just imprisoned in structured learning. How can they be so free? Rosa stepped forward, her voice calm. Because the structure and the freedom work together. Would you like to see how? She led them inside the building as recess ended, and children filed back to their classrooms. The observers followed, their various forms of movement drawing, curious stares from young humans who had never seen aliens before. They entered a 5th grade classroom. 31 children. 1 teacher. The subject on the board read history. The teacher was a woman named Mrs. Oladipo, gray-haired and gentle-eyed, who had been briefed on what this demonstration truly meant. She looked at the alien observers without fear. Class, she said, we have special visitors today. They want to learn how we learn. So let us show them what we can do. She turned to the board and wrote a single question. Why do civilizations fall? This is your challenge, Mrs. Oladipo said. You have 5 minutes to discuss with your neighbors. Then we will share ideas with the whole class. Remember, there are no wrong answers at this stage. Only ideas. The children immediately turned to each other. Voices rose as they debated, argued, agreed, and disagreed. One boy insisted that all civilizations fell because of war. A girl next to him countered that economic collapse was the real reason. A third child suggested that maybe it was different for different civilizations. The observers watched in growing confusion. You ask them questions, Thel said slowly. Questions without predetermined answers. We call it inquiry-based learning, Rosa replied. We teach them how to think, not just what to think. When Mrs. Oladipo called time, hands shot up across the room. Children bounced in their seats, eager to share their theories. The teacher called on them one by one, and the observers heard ideas that ranged from simplistic to surprisingly sophisticated. One small girl, no more than 10 years old, stood up and delivered an analysis of resource depletion that rivaled academic discourse on many council worlds. How does she know this? Morvax demanded. She is a child. She learned it, Paulo said. Here, in this room, over time, but our scans show no neural enhancement, no genetic modification, no technological augmentation, none needed. Rose's smile widened. Just teachers, and practice, and time. The demonstration continued through different subjects. Mathematics, where children solved problems that required logical reasoning. Science, where they conducted experiments and recorded observations. Reading, where they analyzed texts and defended interpretations. Each session revealed the same pattern. Children who entered these facilities, knowing almost nothing, were being transformed into beings capable of complex thought, creative problem-solving, and collaborative reasoning. But the most powerful moment came during music class. The children were learning to play instruments. Not through any technology the council recognized. Not through implants or genetic gifts or telepathic transfer. They were learning through practice. Through failure. A small boy named Marcus struggled with a violin. The sounds he produced were painful, even to human ears. He drew the bow across the strings and winced at the result. Drew it again. Winced again. Drew it again. Why does he continue? Thel asked, her mental voice carrying genuine bewilderment. The task causes him distress. No progress is being made. Any rational being would abandon the attempt. The music teacher, a young man named Mr. Habibi, overheard the question. He knelt beside Marcus and adjusted the boy's grip slightly. Try again, he said gently. Marcus tried again. The sound was marginally better. His face lit up with hope. Why do you persist? Thel asked the boy directly, broadcasting her question so all could hear. Marcus looked at the alien ambassador with the unfiltered honesty of childhood. Because I want to learn how to play. My grandmother played violin. I want to play like her. But it hurts you. We can see your frustration. Your disappointment. Yeah, Marcus admitted. But my teacher says that anything worth doing is worth doing badly until you can do it well. So I practice being bad until I get good. The witness stirred. For 300 years it had remained silent. For 300 years it had simply observed without comment. Now, for the first time in living memory, it spoke. Its voice was like mountains grinding together, like stars being born, like the fundamental forces of the universe given sound. Truth, it said. The child speaks truth. Not just words. Belief. Core belief. They choose this struggle. They embrace it. The classroom fell silent. Even the children seemed to understand that something important had just happened. They are not prisoners, the witness continued. They are students. The concepts are not equivalent. NT. Morvax's tendrils writhed with confusion. But the stress, the evaluations, the hierarchy, the forced compliance, structure, the witness rumbled. Not imprisonment. There is a difference that you have failed to perceive. Rosa stepped forward. Would you like to see the difference more clearly? Would you like to understand why we do this to our children, even knowing it is difficult? She gestured to the classroom around them. 31 children who had been raised in the system the council called torture. 31 young minds being shaped by methods the galaxy considered barbaric. Every adult you will ever meet from Earth, Rosa said, began exactly like these children. In rooms like this, with teachers like Mrs. Oladipo and Mr. Abibi, learning through struggle, growing through challenge, becoming more than they were born to be. She met Morvax's shifting gaze directly. Including me. Including Colonel Hartley. Including Dr. Diallo and Lieutenant Ferreira. Including every human who built the ships that brought us to your council. Every human who developed the technology you now study with such interest. Every human who will ever achieve anything of value. What are you saying? Fell demanded. I am saying that what you call torture, we call education. What you call imprisonment, we call investment. What you call cruelty, Rosa paused, letting the moment stretch. We call love, love. Morvax's form flickered with incomprehension. We love our children enough to prepare them for challenges. We love them enough to let them struggle. We love them enough to know that temporary difficulty creates permanent capability. Rosa turned to face the witness directly. You say you can detect truth. Then tell them. Tell them what I believe. Tell them why every human parent sends their children to these schools despite knowing exactly how hard it will be. The witness was silent for a long moment. Its ancient eyes moved across the classroom, taking in the children, the teachers, the simple decorations on the walls that celebrated learning and growth and achievement. When it spoke again, its voice was softer, almost gentle. She believes she is giving them power. She believes the struggle makes them strong. She believes that these rooms, these teachers, these methods create something precious. It turned to face the other observers. She believes she is giving them the ability to become anything they choose to become. And she believes this gift is worth any price. The transport ship left Earth 3 hours later. Inside, the observers sat in silence, processing what they had witnessed. Finally, Morvax spoke. This changes nothing. The children still suffer. The system still demands compliance. The evaluation still creates hierarchy and judgment. Perhaps, the witness replied, but suffering with purpose is not the same as suffering without meaning. You would be wise to remember the difference. Thel said nothing. Her telepathic shields were fully raised, blocking any sense of her thoughts. Hollow. Ferreira watched them all and wondered what would happen when they returned to the council chamber. He did not have to wonder. Long, the galaxy was about to learn that everything it knew about humanity was about to change, and the lesson was only beginning. The council chamber hummed with tension when the recess ended. Representatives from 1,000 worlds had spent 12 hours debating what they had witnessed. The observer's report had spread across the galactic network. Opinions were divided in ways they had never been before. Some species argued that context changed nothing. Children were still made to suffer. That was the beginning and end of the matter. Others were not so certain. The witness had broken its 300-year silence. That alone demanded serious consideration. Ambassador Rosa Mendez walked to the central podium with calm purpose. Colonel Hartley and Dr. Diallo flanked her, their faces composed but their eyes alert. They knew what was coming. They had planned for this moment since the transport ship first descended toward the hill. Council Headquarters. High Chancellor Morvax rose from the judicial platform. Ambassador Mendez, the observers have returned. Their testimony is ... complicated. The witness has verified that your children enter these institutions voluntarily, and that many emerge transformed in positive ways. However, this does not address the fundamental objection. Suffering is suffering. How can any civilized species justify inflicting it upon their young? Rosa nodded slowly. High Chancellor, I would like to call a witness of my own. Someone who can help the Council understand what our schools truly produce. Proceed. Rosa turned toward the entrance of the chamber. I call Admiral Helena Frost, commander of Earth's first deep space fleet. The woman who entered was not what the Council expected. She was small, barely reaching the shoulder of most human males. Her hair was white, her face lined with age, her movements careful due to injuries sustained decades ago. She walked with a cane crafted from a material that gleamed like captured starlight. She was also, Rosa knew, the most decorated officer in human military history, Admiral Frost. Rosa said, "Please tell the council about your background." Helena's voice was strong despite her years. "I was born in a mining colony on Europa. My parents worked 18-hour shifts in the ice extraction facilities. We had little money, less opportunity, and no expectation of advancement. And yet you became an admiral." "I became an admiral because of teachers. A woman named Mrs. Pemberton saw something in me when I was 7 years old. She pushed me, challenged me, made me believe I could be more than a miner's daughter." "Was it difficult?" Helena laughed, a sound that echoed through the vast chamber. "It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than combat. Harder than command. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I can count. I failed tests. I struggled with mathematics. I was told by other children that I was stupid, that I would never amount to anything." The council stirred. This was what they had accused humanity of. This was the suffering they condemned. "But I kept going," Helena continued, "because Mrs. Pemberton never gave up on me. Because my parents sacrificed everything to keep me in school. Because I learned that failure was not an ending. It was a lesson." Rosa stepped forward. "Admiral, I would like to demonstrate something for the council. With your permission, do it." Rosa turned to the assembly. The prosecution's expert witnesses stated that certain navigational calculations require computational assistance, that no biological mind can process the variables involved in real-time hyperspace navigation. Dr. Diallo has prepared such a calculation. 17 variables. Relativistic adjustment. Gravitational lensing effects. By their own assessment, this problem should be impossible for an unaugmented mind. She handed a data tablet to Helena Dot. The Admiral studied it for 12 seconds. Then she set the tablet down. "The answer is 7.3952, adjusted for local temporal dilation." Silence. Dr. Diallo checked the result against her own computation. Her hands trembled as she confirmed it. Correct. Correct to 5 decimal places. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted questions, demanded explanations, refused to believe what they had witnessed. High Chancellor Morvax restored order with visible difficulty. "How is this possible? Our scans confirm you possess no neural enhancement, no genetic modification. You are baseline human." Helena smiled. "I learned. In school, Mr. Okonkwo showed me that numbers were not my enemy. They were a language. I practiced that language every day for 15 years. And then I practiced more. But the cognitive load alone should be impossible for biological neural tissue." "Should be," Helena agreed. "But humans have a saying. Impossible is just another word for not yet achieved." Rosa called more witnesses. Each one told a similar story. Each one had emerged from the educational system the council condemned to achieve things the galaxy considered impossible. An artist named Isabella, who had learned to perceive colors outside the normal human visual spectrum through years of trained observation. An engineer named Victor, who had designed engines that defied theoretical limits, because he had been taught to question theoretical limits. A doctor named Grace, who had pioneered treatments for diseases that affected species humanity had never even met, because she had learned to see patterns that others missed. Each witness had struggled. Each witness had suffered. Each witness had been transformed by that suffering into something remarkable, but the prosecution would not yield easily. Ambassador Thel rose from her seat, her silver form pulsing with renewed conviction. "You show us your successes. Where are your failures? Where are the children who were broken by your system? Where are the minds that crumbled under the pressure you described so proudly?" Rosa had expected this question. She welcomed it. "May I show the council something?" she asked. "Something we have never revealed to any species. Something we consider so personal that even most humans do not discuss it openly." Permission was granted. Rosa projected an image above the chamber. A young girl, perhaps 8 years old, sitting alone at a desk. Her face was streaked with tears. In front of her lay a mathematics test, covered in red marks. A failing grade. "This child," Rosa said, "is named Lucia. This image was recorded 24 years ago. Her parents gave permission for its use in this proceeding." The image shifted. The same girl, slightly older, still struggling, still crying, still failing. Lucia was told she was not smart enough for advanced mathematics. She was placed in remedial classes. Other children called her stupid. Teachers sug. Instead, she pursued less demanding subjects. More images. The same girl at 10, at 12, at 14, struggling, failing, getting up, trying again. By every metric your observers would use, Lucia was a victim of our system. A child crushed by expectations she could not meet. A failure. The image changed one final time. A woman in her early 30s stood before a complex holographic display. She wore the uniform of Earth's Theoretical Physics Division. The display showed equations that made even the most advanced council scientists pause in confusion. "Dr. Lucia Vargas," Rosa said, "lead researcher on humanity's first stable wormhole project. The technology that will allow us to cross the galaxy in hours instead of years. The technology that will transform interstellar civilization forever." Rosa let the image fade. "You asked where our failures are. They are here, standing before you in this chamber, running our research facilities, commanding our fleets, leading our governments. Because we do not believe in failure. We believe in learning." The chamber was silent. "Every human in this room failed at something," Rosa continued. "Every human on Earth has known defeat, disappointment, and despair. That is not despite our educational system. It is because of it. We teach our children to fail because failure is how humans grow." She turned to face Morvax directly. "You want to know what our schools produce? They produce beings who are never finished. Beings who never stop learning, never stop adapting, never stop becoming more than they were. Beings who look at the impossible and see only the next challenge to overcome." Rosa paused, letting her words settle into the consciousness of 12 billion watching beings. "And that brings me to something else I need to discuss. Something that may concern the Council, far more than our treatment of children." Dr. Diallo projected new data across the chamber's display systems. "I would like to discuss what happens when humans apply our educational philosophy to something other than childhood development." The data showed military engagements, strategic analyses, tactical evolutions spanning 3 centuries of human interstellar expansion. "I would like to discuss human warfare." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop by several degrees. Many species had evolved beyond warfare entirely. Those who had not considered it a mark of primitiveness. The topic was rarely raised in civilized company, but Rosa was not interested in being civilized anymore. "You think you understand what we are," she said. "You think you have measured our capabilities and calculated our threat level. But you have made a critical error." She gestured at the data streams flowing across the display. "You measured what we are. You did not measure what we are becoming." The implications hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall and across the council chamber. For the first time since humanity had arrived, something new began to spread through the assembled representatives. Not disgust, not outrage, not condemnation. Fear. They were beginning to understand. Colonel James Hartley stepped forward to replace Rosa at the central podium. His movement was precise, controlled, every inch the military commander. The council representatives shifted uneasily in their seats. They had been prepared for diplomats and scientists. They were not prepared for a warrior. "I apologize for the discomfort," Hartley said, though his tone carried no apology. "The topic of warfare is considered distasteful among civilized species. But if you want to understand humanity, you need to understand how we fight." High Chancellor Morvax's tendrils coiled with tension. "The Council does not wish to hear threats. I am not here to threaten. I am here to explain." Hartley clasped his hands behind his back. "Ambassador Mendez showed you what our schools produce. Brilliant minds, creative thinkers, problem solvers. But she did not show you what happens when those minds are applied to conflict." He gestured, and new data filled the chamber's displays. Battle records, strategic analyses, after-action reports from 300 years of human military history. In that time, humanity has engaged in 17 military conflicts with other spacefaring species. Small skirmishes mostly, border disputes, misunderstandings that escalated before diplomacy could intervene. The numbers scrolled past: casualties, resources expended, tactical outcomes. We lost every single one. A ripple of surprise moved through the assembly. This was not what they expected to hear. 17 engagements, 17 defeats. By any measure, humanity should have been conquered, absorbed, or destroyed. Hartley paused. "We were not. Would the Council like to know why?" Silence answered him. "Because we learn from defeat. We do not simply recover from losses. We study them. We analyze them. We understand exactly what went wrong and why. And then we change." He pulled up a specific battle record. The Kellinis incident. 47 years ago, a Kellinis patrol destroyed 3 human exploration vessels near disputed territory. 216 humans died. The display showed tactical diagrams. Human ships surrounded, outmaneuvered, eliminated with brutal efficiency. The Kellinis used a gravitational pincer formation that our captains had never encountered. Our shields failed against their resonance weapons. Our retreat vectors were predicted and cut off. It was a massacre. Hartley let the images fade. Within 6 months, every ship in the human fleet had been retrofitted with shields resistant to resonance frequencies. Within a year, we had developed counter-tactics for gravitational pincer formations. Within 2 years, our academy had incorporated both advances into standard training. He met the eyes of the Kellinis representative, who sat rigid in the upper tiers. The Kellinis have never successfully used either tactic against humanity again. We learned. We adapted. We improved. More battle records appeared. More defeats. And after each defeat, a detailed analysis of how humanity had responded. Every loss makes us stronger. Every failure reveals weaknesses we did not know we had. Every enemy teaches us something new. Colonel Hartley's voice hardened. That is what our schools prepare us for. Not just success, failure. We raise our children to understand that defeat is not an ending. It is information. It is opportunity. It is the foundation upon which improvement is built. Ambassador Thel rose from her seat. "You are admitting that your species learns warfare the way your children learn mathematics? Through repetition and failure? I am admitting that we apply the same philosophy to everything we do: war, science, art, diplomacy, every. Human endeavor follows the same pattern. Try, fail, learn, try. Again, that is monstrous. That is effective." Hartley called a new witness. A young woman in flight uniform stepped forward. Lieutenant Amelia Stone, pilot in Humanity's Diplomatic Corps. She was the one who had flown the delegation to the Council headquarters. Lieutenant Stone graduated from our Naval Academy 3 years ago. Before that, she attended schools from age 5 to age 18. 13 years of structured education. He faced her directly. Lieutenant, I want you to answer honestly. If the Council voted to sterilize Earth, what would you do? Every being in the chamber leaned forward. They expected rage, defiance, a demonstration of human aggression that would justify their fears. Amelia Stone was quiet for a long moment. I would be heartbroken, she said finally. Heartbroken that we failed to make them understand. Heartbroken that they feared us so much. Heartbroken that our children would never get to meet children from other worlds. Her voice remained steady. And then I would ask what we did wrong, what we missed, what we could have done differently. Because that is what I was taught. Not to win at any cost. To learn from everything. Even from the destruction of your species. Even from that. Because maybe, somehow, the lesson would survive. Maybe someone, somewhere, would find a record of what happened and understand. And maybe they would do better than we did. The chamber was utterly silent. Colonel Hartley spoke into that silence. That is what our schools give us. Not weapons. Not aggression. The ability to face any challenge, any failure, any disaster, and ask, what can we learn from this? He turned to address the full assembly. You fear us. I understand. A species that improves with every defeat, that grows stronger with every setback, that turns every loss into a lesson. That must seem terrifying. His voice softened, though his posture remained rigid. But consider this. For 300 years, humanity has been learning. Learning from you. Learning from our conflicts, our mistakes, our failures. Every species that has defeated us in battle has taught us something valuable. He paused. In 300 years, we have never repeated the same mistake twice. We have never lost the same way twice. We have never stopped adapting, improving, becoming more capable. The fear in the chamber was palpable now. Species who had never considered humanity a threat were reassessing. Species who had defeated humans in the past were remembering that those victories had been followed by rapid human advancement. So yes, Hartley said, perhaps you should be concerned. Perhaps you should wonder what we will become in another 300 years. Or 3,000. Or 30,000? He let the numbers hang in the air. But before you decide to destroy us out of fear, consider one more thing. He gestured to Lieutenant Stone. This is a human trained for war. A pilot capable of combat maneuvers that would kill most species. A mind trained to process tactical information faster than your computers can calculate. He pointed to Rosa, to Dr. Giallo, to himself. We are all products of the same system. The schools you call prisons. The education you call torture. We have been trained to fight, yes. But we have also been trained to think, to question, to choose. Colonel Hartley's final words carried across the vast chamber like a promise and a warning combined. We could have come here as conquerors. With our capacity for learning, our ability to adapt, our willingness to grow through any hardship, we could have built weapons beyond your comprehension. We could have learned your weaknesses and exploited them. We could have become exactly what you fear. He shook his head. Instead, we came as applicants, requesting membership, seeking partnership, hoping for friendship. Because our schools taught us something else, alongside resilience and adaptation. He met the High Chancellor's gaze directly. They taught us that the point of becoming powerful is not to dominate. It is to help. It is to build. It is to make the universe better than we found it. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, and an ancient voice spoke. One of the elder representatives, a being so old, It remembered the formation of the council itself. Its form was crystalline, light refracting through geometries that hurt to perceive directly. If we let them continue, it said, its voice carrying the weight of millennia, what will they become? No one answered, because no one knew, and that, more than anything else, was what terrified them. Rosa Mendez stepped forward, her voice cutting through the fear. That is not the right question, she said. The right question is, what will we become together? Because we did not come here seeking permission to grow. We will grow regardless of your decision. We came here seeking partners, allies, friends who can grow alongside us. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes of every shape and form. You can choose fear. You can try to contain us, isolate us, destroy us. Maybe you would even succeed. But we would learn from that too. We always learn. Her voice hardened. Or you can choose something else. You can choose to learn with us. You can choose to grow with us. You can choose to see what the universe looks like when species that seemed impossible work together towards something greater. The chamber held its breath. The vote was coming. Humanity's fate hung in the balance, and Rosa Mendez stood ready to deliver the final argument that would determine the future of her species. The Grand Assembly had reached an impasse. 3 days of testimony, hundreds of witnesses, mountains of evidence on both sides. And still, the verdict remained uncertain. Rosa Mendez stood alone at the central podium for what she knew would be the final time. Colonel Hartley and Dr. Diallo had taken their seats. The witnesses had all spoken. Now only her words remained between humanity and judgment. High Chancellor, she said, honored representatives, before you vote, I ask for the right of final statement. Morvax considered for a moment. Its tendrils shifted through colors that suggested reluctant acceptance. You may speak. Rosa looked up at the vast assembly. 12 billion eyes. 1,000 species. The combined wisdom and prejudice of an entire galaxy focused on one small human woman. You ask what we will become, she said. I cannot tell you. Not because I wish to deceive you, but because we genuinely do not know. She let that admission settle into the chamber. That is the point. That is what our schools teach us above all else. Not certainty. Not destiny. Not a predetermined path toward a fixed ending. They teach us that we can become anything we choose to become if we are willing to do the work. She gestured to her colleagues. I was born in a village in Argentina where clean water was a luxury. Colonel Hartley grew up in refugee camps, moving from country to country as conflicts erupted around. Him, Dr. Diallo's parents were immigrants who arrived in their new country with nothing but hope. Rose's voice strengthened. None of us were born to be here. We learned our way here, step by step, failure by failure, lesson by lesson. Teachers who believed in us when we did not believe in ourselves. Schools that demanded more than we thought we could give. A system that pushed us until we became what we needed to become. She paused. You have shown us images of our children crying over tests. And you are right. We do ask much of our young. Perhaps too much sometimes. We debate this constantly. We try to improve. We argue over methods and approaches and outcomes. Because we, too, are still learning how to teach. Her voice dropped to something almost gentle. But you have not shown us what comes after. You have not shown us the child who failed a test, went home in tears, studied until her eyes burned, and returned to pass it. You have not shown us the teenager who was told he was not smart enough, who worked twice as hard as everyone else, who proved every doubter wrong. You have not shown us the adult who carries every lesson, every failure, every triumph inside them, ready to be used when needed. Rosa projected one final image. Not a school, Not a military academy. Not a research facility. A hospital ship, gleaming white against the backdrop of stars. The words Hope of Earth visible on its hull. This is the HSS Mercy, Rosa said. Humanity's first interstellar medical vessel. It has been stationed at the border of Council space for 3 years, offering free treatment to any species in need. No questions asked. No payment required. Statistics appeared alongside the image. In 3 years, this ship has treated 4,200,000 patients. Beings from 47 different species. Not one of them human. Diseases we had never encountered before. Physiologies completely different from our own. Challenges that should have been impossible. She let the numbers speak for themselves. The doctors on this ship were trained in our schools. The nurses. The administrators. The engineers who keep the systems running. Every single person on board spent their childhoods in the facilities you call prisons. Learning, struggling, growing. Rosa turned to face the witness directly. You can detect truth. Tell them what I believe. Tell them why we built this ship. Tell them what our schools were really designed to create. The ancient being stirred. Its voice emerged like continents shifting, like stars dying and being reborn. She believes she is not defending a practice. She is defending a purpose. The schools are not meant to create suffering. They are meant to create capability. Capability used in service. The witness moved forward, its impossible form casting shadows that did not match physical reality. She believes that humanity's purpose is to help, to heal, to build. She believes that every child who cries over a test is being prepared to ease the suffering of others. She believes that temporary pain creates permanent compassion. It turned to face the assembly. She believes, with absolute conviction, that humanity's greatest strength is not their intelligence, or their adaptability, or their capacity for growth. It is their determination to use these gifts for others. The chamber was utterly silent. Rosa spoke into that silence. You asked what we will become. Here is my answer. We will become whatever we need to become to help. That is what our schools teach us. Not superiority, not conquest, service. The idea that we can make ourselves better in order to make everything better. She looked at Morvax directly. You are afraid of our potential. I understand. Sometimes we are afraid too. A species that never stops learning, never stops growing, never stops becoming more powerful. That is a terrifying prospect. Her voice hardened. But we have learned that fear is not a reason to stop growing. It is a reason to grow more carefully, more thoughtfully, more kindly. Our schools do not just teach us skills. They teach us responsibility. They teach us that power without purpose is dangerous. They teach us that capability must be matched by compassion. Rosa took a breath. You caged human children, you said. No, we gave them something more valuable than freedom. We gave them the tools to earn their freedom, the skills to expand their freedom, the wisdom to share their freedom with others. She stepped back from the podium. Whatever you decide today, we will accept, and we will learn from it. If you vote to isolate us, we will study why. We will understand your fears better than you understand them yourselves. We will work to address them, even from the darkness of quarantine. Her final words rang through the chamber. That is our way. That will always be our way. Not because we are stronger than you. Not because we are smarter than you. Because we were taught from our earliest years that the only failure that truly matters is the failure to keep trying. She returned to her seat. The vote was called. One by one, species cast their decisions. The ancient crystalline elder voted for acquittal, citing the testimony of the witness. The Kellenists, despite their history of conflict with humanity, voted the same way, citing grudging respect for an enemy that never stopped improving. Ambassador Thal abstained, her expression unreadable. For long minutes, the outcome wavered. Fear battled understanding. Prejudice fought evidence. Old assumptions clashed with new revelations. Finally, High Chancellor Morvax rose to announce the result. The Council has reached its verdict. By a margin of 329 votes, humanity is acquitted of all charges. The human delegation did not celebrate. They simply nodded, accepting the outcome with the same composure they would have shown if the verdict had gone the other way. But Morvax was not finished. Furthermore, the Council moves to establish a new initiative. Human educational principles will be studied, documented, and offered to any species that wishes to participate. What you call schools will be examined not as crimes, but as methods. The galaxy has much to learn from Earth. Rosa rose slowly. Then perhaps, she said, school is in session for everyone. 10 years later, the first class of the Galactic Academy of Adaptive Learning stood assembled for graduation. The ceremony took place in a new structure, built specifically for this purpose, a building that combined architectural elements from every participating species. 200 students. 73 species. All of them had struggled. All of them had failed. All of them had grown in ways their ancestors would not have believed possible. Among them was a young being named Witness Second, direct descendant of the ancient entity who had testified at humanity's trial. Its graduation speech was broadcast across the galaxy. 10 years ago, it said, its voice carrying echoes of its ancestors' power, humanity stood accused of crimes against their young. Today I stand as proof that they were guilty of something far different. They were guilty of believing in potential. They were guilty of demanding growth. They were guilty of refusing to accept that any being must remain limited by the circumstances of their birth. It looked across the assembled graduates. We learned. We struggled. We grew. And now we stand ready to serve a galaxy that is only beginning to understand what it means to truly learn. On Earth, in a small classroom in what was once called Riverside Elementary, a teacher named Mr. Oladipo, grandson of the woman who had demonstrated human education to the Council observers, looked up at a class of children from 12 different worlds. Human children sat beside young Vellani and Kreth larvae. Mindweaver adolescents shared desks with beings whose names could not be pronounced by any human throat. All right, Mr. Oladipo said, smiling the same smile his grandmother had worn all those years ago. Who is ready to learn something new? Every hand rose. Every tentacle. Every telepathic projection of eagerness dot. And in that moment, in that simple classroom on an unremarkable planet in an average solar system, the galaxy changed forever. Because the lesson was no longer about humanity dot. It was about everyone dot, and the learning had only just begun.